It's a remarkable story, isn't it?
Amazing.
Extraordinary. And also, she was unflappable, apparently, the Princess Royal.
She's
just
brilliant.
refused to get out of the car and said, I'm not going anywhere. Extraordinary. Well, Jim Beaton was awarded the George Cross for protecting the Princess, and delighted to say joins us now, along with the former head of Royalty Protection, Di Davis. Jim, you won't remember, but I met you some time ago at the Imperial War Museum when Princess Anne was opening an exhibition to do with the George Cross, and you were there reunited with her. And you told me then what great admiration you had for the Princess, cool under fire, but you didn't do so badly yourself.
Well, the slight difference was really that it was probably my job, and also I had a wee bit of police training, not very much, but a little bit, whereas Princess Anne had nothing, and yet the way she displayed it, you would have thought she'd been highly trained to deal with any type of that situation.
Jim, does it feel like 50 years ago when you go through something that makes the headlines, and also just on a personal level is kind of traumatic, I imagine? It never really leaves you, I bet.
No, I'm too thick for it to be traumatic, but it does. It doesn't really feel like 50 years ago, I must admit. When somebody mentioned it last week, I was a little bit surprised, and suddenly thought, oh, I suppose it is. It was an incident, you know, it happened, and made big changes in the police protection, obviously. But no, it's passed fine, and I've been busy. I've got family and golf and stuff like that, so time passes. So it goes on as normal, really.
But back then, Jim, even though you'd had some training, you took 3 bullets for the Princess. You effectively stood between her and a deranged gunman.
Well, I was supposed to be a protection officer, really, so, you know, I keep saying there was only two things to do, and one was go forward and the other was go back. So I just tried to fuddle about. You must remember that back in 1974, there was no communication, and we were extremely lucky that Michael Hills, who was outside Clarence House and nearby, had got one of the fast police radios, or radios on his shoulder, so he was able to send a message out. Otherwise, we would have just been relying on the good old public to phone in and say there's something happening.
Yeah.
So times have changed drastically.
It would be very different now. No doubt somebody would have caught it on an iPhone, probably, Jim. There'd be footage of what happened. It would be very different. How do you think it would compare now, being a Royal Protection Officer today, compared to 50 years ago?
Oh, it's a different job altogether. I mean, we were very much the bottom of the pile as far as police regarded us. But nowadays, you know, it's a well-trained, highly selected, lots of money spent on it and everything. I mean, we didn't have radios in the cars, we'd nothing, we'd no backup. We just, everything plodded along, really. It was one of these things that had not fallen into oblivion, but that sort of idea, because there was many more things happening. It was only when Ian Ball caused this problem that the protection came to the fore, really, with a vengeance. And money was spent on everything under the sun, including new guns, new bullets, backup cars, many more police officers. So the whole thing was a dramatic change.
Let's bring Di Davis in here. Di, of course, what Jim's saying there, it has all changed. There's no way that lunatic, I assume, would have been able to get anywhere as near to the Princess's car as he did 50 years ago, let alone open the door.
Well, you're absolutely right, but let me pay tribute to Jim. What an incredible man he is and remains. He fundamentally, or that incident fundamentally changed how royalty protection started to improve. In his day, as I recall, there were only about 10 personal protection officers. Now there are many, many more, quite rightly. And again, he attributes to the training now that these officers do go, and clearly it has changed out of all recognition. But, you know, history repeats itself, so you could never, ever think it couldn't happen again. But of course, now having had the kind of history and the performance that he showed, those officers now selected, I hope, are up to his level of duty and ability. He tried his best, but he did so in circumstances which, frankly, today could never have happened. So I'm pleased in one sense that it happened, because it actually laid the foundation for what is now the modern protection outfit that hopefully it is, and the level of expertise that goes with it.
Jim, just tell us what she was like, Princess Anne. We know her as indomitable and hard-working. What was she like to work with close up?
Very good, generally. She was open. She obviously had a protection officer from the time she was born. So she was, you were just part of the group, really. But she was very good, always cool, calm and collected. Sometimes a wee bit forthright, but that was fine. You knew where you stood and what was happening. So overall, it was very good.
OK. All right. Thank you so much. What a lovely piece of history. And I think it's
Yeah.
so interesting to reflect on these occasions 50 years later. Jim Beaton there, who was awarded the George Cross.
What a hero.
And former head of Royal Protection Command, Di Davis. I wonder if that scene's been in The Crown. I've not got to that bit yet in The Crown series.
I think it is,
It must be.
actually.
It's too good not to be.
Because it was an extraordinary moment.